Hello, welcome to this video in which we go through the Pali to English translation exercises in lesson 13 of Lily de Silva, which is page 51 on the printed book. Number 1, Buddho Viharasmin Sannipatantanam Manusanam Dhamman Deseti. And again, Buddho Viharasmin Sannipatantanam Manusanam Dhamman Deseti. So Buddho, the Buddha, Deseti, teaches or preaches. Dhammam Deseti, he preaches the Dhamma. To whom? Manusanam, to people. Remember, this is the form that in Sanskrit would be only the genitive plural, but in Pali the genitive has almost completely merged. The dative has almost completely merged with the genitive. So to the people, the word before that is a present participle treated as an adjective. To the assembled or to the assembling people, people who assemble. To the Sannipatantanam Manusanam, who assemble where? Viharasmin. So literally the Buddha in the Vihara assembling people, or in the Vihara assembling people, the Dhamma teaches. Number 2, Buddhassa pujetum chintento upasako pupani ochinati. And again, Buddhassa pujetum chintento upasako pupani ochinati. So the subject of the sentence, upasako, does what? Ochinati, he plucks or gathers. Pupani, pupam, neuter, pupani, neuter plural, flowers. So the upasako, the upasaka, plucks flowers. Chintento, present participle, thinking of or intending to do something with the intention of doing what? Buddhassa pujetum. Puja, often translated as worship, but in Hinduism it's more doing puja to a deity, and it can therefore came to have the meaning of making offerings. That is why we see this in the dative form, genitive dative, Buddhassa pujetum, they are making offerings to the Buddha. And this is the pujetum is the infinitive, governed by chintento, intending to make offerings to the Buddha. The Buddhassa pujetum chintento upasako pupani ochinati. Number 3, te patte utakena purenta gitam gayanti. So te, they, gitam gayanti, sing a song. So te gitam gayanti, they sing a song. Purenta, filling, while filling. Patte, bowls, utakena, with water. Te patte utakena purenta gitam gayanti. Number 4, tumhe ranye vasante mege pirletva asapurisa hota. This verb hota, of course the second person plural here, hota, bhavata, if you use the full form. It means to be, but it often does have the meaning of to become as well. So you, tumhe, asapurisa hota. Either you are bad people, literally ungood people, you are bad people, or you become evil, aranye vasante mige piletva. Pileti, Sanskrit piedayati, to oppress, to vex, to cause harm, to cause pain, to. Here it's having, it has the absolutive form, which mostly or frequently is translated as having done one thing, then doing another, a sequence. But it often has this meaning of accompanying action, or one action is the cause of another, or the reason for another. So here, by saying Mige pilitva asapurisa hota, it doesn't mean action number one, you have oppressed the deer. Okay, stop. Now, the next thing that happens is you become bad people. It's by oppressing, by reason of the fact that you are harming these animals, that makes you a bad person. You are a bad person because you are harming these animals. So bear in mind this alternative meaning of the absolutive form. Vasante, of course, present participle, masculine, plural, accusative. That's aranye vasante mige. That's the object of the verb piletva, so tormenting or causing pain to the in the forest living deer. So tumhe, you, aranye vasante mige piletva, because you are, or by tormenting the deer that live in the forest, asapurisa huta, are or become bad people. Number 5. Mayam apanam gantva vanijyehi saddhing katetva dhanyam vikinama. This katetva, it was given in the vocabulary as having, sorry, I can't find it now. Speaks, yeah, kateti, speaks. It also means to have a discussion, discussing. And here, obviously, it means maybe even parleying or bargaining. Mayam apanam gantva vanijyehi saddhim katetva dhanyam vikinama. So we, mayam dhanyam vikinama, we sell grain or corn. Apanam gantva, gantva having gone, apanam means a shop or the market. Vanijyehi saddhim katetva, katetva having discussed vanijyehi saddhim with the merchants. So, and it could also be translated as a series in English, a series of subclauses. So we go to the market, we have a discussion with the merchants, and we sell corn. Mayam apanam gantva vanijyehi saddhim katetva dhanyam vikinama. Now, in this sentence, it looks like logically 3 actions in sequence, and it could be put mayam apanam gachama vanijyehi saddhim katema cha dhanyam vikinama cha. Yes, that's okay. It's not particularly. It's better if it's a series of actions to use the series of absolutives. So mayam apanam gantva vanijyehi saddhim katetva dhanyam vikinama. Number 5. Tvam uddentam sukham disva ganhitum ichhasi. So tvam ichhasi, you want. Tvam ganhitum ichhasi. This is from the root grab. So you want to take, you want to seize, you want to catch here. So you want to catch. Uddentam sukham disva. Disva having seen. Sukham, a parrot. Uddentam, flying. So having seen a parrot flying, you want to catch it. Note that in to make good English, you'd have to put it. Having seen a parrot flying you want to catch. Something's missing there, you want to catch it. In Sanskrit and Pali, if it's completely obvious what the object of the verb is, you don't need to say it. So having seen a parrot flying you want to catch is perfectly good Pali or Sanskrit. So tvam udentam sukhan disva ganhitumichasi. Number 7. Babbatamha udentam chandam passitum kumaro gharmha dhavati. Note here, in one sentence immediately following the other, we have the different words udentam and udentam, completely different words. So number 7, Pabbatamha udentam chandam passitum kumaro garamha dhavati. So the subject of the sentence, kumaro, the boy, garamha dhavati, runs out of the house. So that's the ablative there. Literally, the boy from the house runs. In order to do what? We have an infinitive here. So to see what? Chandam, to see the moon. Udentam, udeti, rising. Udaya is the rising. Udeti, it rises. So udentam, participle, masculine accusative singular. Udentam chandam passitum, in order to see the moon rising, or the rising moon. Rising over the mountain. In Pali you'd put it, in Sanskrit, in an ablative here, literally rising from the mountain. Pabbatamha. Pabbatamha udentam chandam passitum, in order to see the moon rising from the mountain, over the mountain. Kumaro gharamha dhavati, the boy runs out of the house. This gharamha, let me call up my iPad. Here we are. The word for house, normal word for house in Sanskrit is griha, which in Pali becomes geha, house. But in Buddhist Sanskrit and also in Pali, you can have not so common, the ghara is another form of the word house. And incidentally, in modern Hindi, it's become ghar, at home, gharme, at home. So all of that means house. Number 8, aham kasikehi saha kittasmin rukhe rupeme. So aham rukhe rupeme, I plant trees. Where? Kittasmin, in the field. So aham kasikehi saha kittasmin rukhe rupame kasikehi saha, with the farmers. So aham kasikehi saha kitasmin rukhe rupeme, I, with the farmers, in the field, trees plant. Number 9, mayam amachehi saha mantenta pasadasmin asanesu nisidama. So the subject, mayam, we, nisidama, sit. Where? Asanesu, on seats. Remember this this asanesu here, it's the same word that we use for the asanas of yoga. It's from the root of the long as, meaning to sit. Asana is literally a sitting, And then in yoga, it means one of the the postures, the asanas of yoga, and also as a physical object, it means a seat or a chair. So asanesu nisidama, we sit on chairs. Where pasadasmim, in the palace, doing what? Mantenta, consulting. How's it translated there? Just discussing consulting. Amachehi saha, with the ministers. So mayam amachehi saha mantenta pasadasmim asane sunisidama. So we, discussing with the ministers in the palace, on the chairs, sit. Number 10. Tumhe tathagatassa savake nimantitva danandeta. So, danam, tumhe danam deta, you give dana. Having done what? Nimantitva, having summoned or having invited. Remember the difference between manteti and nimanteti. Manteti is just to consult, discuss. Nimanteti is to invite. So, tathagatassa savake, invited whom? The savake, accusative plural, the savakas, the disciples of the Tathagata. So, tumhe tathagatassa savake nimantitva danandeta. You, having invited the Tathagata's disciples, give dana. Number 11. Upasaka viharangantva dipe jaletva dhammam sotum nisidanti. So we've got two absolutives here. So the upasaka, the lay devotees, lay disciples. Nisidanti, sit down. Having done what? Viharang gantva, having gone to the vihara, to the monastery. Dipe jalitva, having lit lamps. Dhammam sotum, in order to hear the Dhamma. Nisidanti, sit down. So the lay disciples, Upasaka, Viharangantva, having gone to the vihara, Dipe jalitva, having lit lamps, sit down, Nisidanti, for what purpose? Dhammam sotum. This is the infinitive of purpose here. Nisidanti dhammam sotum. We do exactly the same in English. They sit down to hear the Dhamma. I mean, they sit down in order to hear the Dhamma. So on this point, infinitive and English have the exact same use of the infinitive. Number 12. Luddhako sisang tussena chadetva nisiditva sakune maretum ussahati. So the Luddhako, the hunter, ussahati, endeavors, strives, often used in a morally highly positive sense, for example, by Shantideva in the Bodhicharya Avataris, constantly talking about the ussaha, the effort that needs to be made. There's some root sah, by the way. It has the meaning, the basic meaning is to bear something, like bear a hardship. If something is, in talking about Sanskrit, as asahya, it's unbearable. But sah also has the meaning of, in fact, it's cognate with the German word Sieg, meaning victory. So the sah, the idea of sah, it means a struggle, but a struggle that you win. You're striving against some obstacle, against some force, either a natural force or a human hostile force. The utsaha in Sanskrit and ussaha in Pali, it's the idea of striving or struggling, as is necessary on the spiritual path. So many things we struggle against. But it also can mean, just as an ordinary verb, it can just mean you're trying to do something. So Luddiku sisam dussena, dussa as a cloth, sisam dussena chadet va, having covered his head with a cloth, nisidit va, having sat down, sakune maretum usahti, is trying to kill birds. In fact, this could equally be translated as the hunter is sitting there with a cloth over his head, trying to kill birds. You're describing the kind of condition he's in. He's sitting there, he's got a cloth over his head, and he's trying to kill birds. In Pali, it's perfectly correct. Say, having covered his head with cloth, sisam dusena chadet va, having sat down, nisidit va, sakune maretum usahati. So again, the fact that we've got a series of absolutives here doesn't necessarily mean that it's did A and then stopped doing A and moved on to the next one, B. It can be like a conjoined series, just as in English we wouldn't say having covered his head with a cloth, having sat down, he tries to kill birds. We say he's sitting there with a cloth over his head. We express it differently in English. Number 13. So vane ahindante gone gamam anitva vanijanam vikinati. So he vikinati, he sells. To whom? Vanijanam, he sells to the merchants. The gune, the cattle. Vane ahindante, vane, locative singular, in the forest. Ahindante, accusative, masculine accusative plural, one of the present participle, wandering. So the cattle wandering in the forest. Gamam anitva, having led, having brought to the village. Gamam, accusative of motion here. Vanijanam vikinati, sells to the merchants. So there were cattle wandering in the forest. He leads them to the village, brings them to the village, and sells them to the merchant. So the in the forest wandering deer, vane ahindante gone, gamamanitva, having brought to the village, vanijanam vikinati, sells to the merchants. Number 14. Tvam apranehi bandani kinitva sakatena anitva gehe tapesi. So tvam tapesi. I talked in the grammar section of this lesson about stapayati, literally to cause to stand. It's the causative form from the root sta. So it means to cause to stand, to stop, to install, to keep. It got all these meanings. The exact meaning, the exact translation will frequently depend on context. So here it just he keeps them, causes them to stand, puts them in place. So puts them in place. These bandani, the goods. So the you, apaneti bandani kinitva, having bought goods from the shops. Apanam, ablative plural, apanehi bandani kinitva, from the shops, goods having bought. Sakatena anitva, having brought them in a cart. We'd say in English more usually in a cart, but Pali and Sanskrit would tend to use the instrumental here, by cart, as we also say in English. Having brought them by cart, gehe tapesi, you keep them at home. So means you buy goods from the shop, buy things from the shops, bring them in a cart and keep them at home. Tvam apanehi bandani kinitva sakatena anitva gehe tapesi. Number 15. Tumhe kakachehi rukhe chinditva pabatamha patetha. So, here we are. Number 15, the root chid, to cut. And it's one of those verbs that inserts a nasal before the final consonant. So chid, chinditva, chindati, chindami, the N gets in. So having cut, chinditva, what? Ruke, having cut trees, kakachehi, with saws. So that's the instrumental plural. So you with saws, kakachehi with saws, ruke trees, chintitva, having cut, babatamha, pateta. Literally you fell them, pateta, cause to fall, to fell. You fell them from the mountains. That's a way of saying you fell trees on the mountain. Babatamha pateta, literally to cause to fall from the mountain. Having cut these trees, you fell them from the mountain. Read again. Tumhe kakachehi rukhe chintitva babatamha pateta. Number 16. Dhammena manuse palenta bhupala akkusalam parivajjenti. Parivajjeti is to avoid. Bhupala, the kings, literally the earth protectors. Bhupala akkusalam parivajjenti, the earth protectors, the kings, avoid the ungood, the unskillful, the akkusala, they avoid evil. Palenta has the idea of both protecting, guarding, and ruling. So ruling, nominative plural, present participle. Manuse, ruling people. Dhammena by the Dhamma, but it often has the meaning of just righteously, ruling righteously. So dhammena manuse palenta, ruling men, ruling people righteously. Bhupala akusalam parivajjanti, kings avoid evil. Dhammena manuse palenta, bhupala akusalam parivajjanti. Number 17. Satcham jnatumichanto aham samanehi panye puchami. So, ichanto, present participle, wishing what? Jnatum, to know, satcham, the truth. So, the truth to know, wishing to know the truth. Aham samane panye puchami. Aham, I, puchami, I ask. Panye, in Sanskrit it's a question is prashna, and that becomes panha in Pali. So panye puchami, I ask questions. I ask the monks questions. I put questions to the monks. In Sanskrit and Pali you use an ablative, that samanehi, literally from the monks. You ask questions from the monks, is how it's expressed in Sanskrit and Pali. So samanehi panye puchami, I ask questions. As we say in English, I ask the monks questions. You can say I ask questions of the monks, like from the monks. So satcham jnatumichanto aham samanehi panye puchami. Number 18. Danam Dattva Silang Rakkanta Sappurisa Saggalokam Papunanti. So, Sappurisa, good men, Saggalokam, literally the heaven world. Saggalokam Papunanti, they obtain or achieve or get to the Saggalokam, they get to the heaven world. Good men get to heaven, good people get to heaven. Danam Dattva Silam Rakkanta. Treat the Dattva there as if it's an alternative to the present participle. You could say Danam Denta or Dadanta Silang Rakkanta, but because you've got two verbs of the same form in sequence, the first one can flip to become an absolutive. So by giving alms, Danam Dattva, here's the idea is by keeping, Silam Rakkanta, literally Rakkati, to protect or to keep. Silang Rakkati, literally to keep the sila, to keep virtue. So by Danam Dattva Silang Rakkanta, giving alms, giving dana, keeping virtue, that's observing the precepts, keeping virtue. Sappurisa Saggalokam Papunanti. Good people go to the Saggaloka. Saggaloka. I was just looking for my pen. Saggaloka. Sagga. In Sanskrit, some of you might be saying, well, if it's as you are studying Sanskrit, visarga followed by a ga, why isn't it swoga? Why is it swarga? The answer to that is when you have a visarga in Sanskrit, sorry, this is a bit of a rabbit hole digression. I know quite a few people seeing this will also be students of Sanskrit. Where the final visarga, mostly the final visarga represents an S, but there are certain words where it represents an original, etymologically original R. Like punar is another word like that. Punar becomes puna, but it's from punar. And that's why, when after say followed by bhava, being, punarbhava, being again, rebirth, it resolves back into an R, not an O, so punarbhava. Swa, etymologically originally a swar, so it becomes swa. Followed by then in compound with the ga, it means the self of oneself. So it becomes swarga, the self going, literally the self, swa, self, ga, going. The self going is where the self wants to go, is where you really want to be, where your self will feel at home. That is the meaning of the etymological breakdown of this word swarga, which then becomes sagga in Pali. And you can expand it by saying Saggaloka, the heaven world. So Sappurisa Saggalokam Papunanti, good people achieve the heaven world. So Danam Dattva Silang Rakkanta Sappurisa Saggalokam Papunanti. Number 19. Dhanyam Minanto Kassako Apanam Netva Dhanyam Kinitum Chinteti. So Kassako, the farmer, Dhanyam Minanto, remember this root mi comes minati, to measure. We have Amita, unmeasured, boundless, as in Amitabha. So Minanto, measuring. Dhanyam Minanto, measuring out the grain. Kassako, the farmer. Apanam Netva, having brought it to the market. Dhanyam Vikinitum Chinteti, intends to sell it, intends to sell the grain. So what it actually would mean is here is that the farmer is measuring out the grain with the intention of taking it to the market and selling it. So chinteti, what he has in mind, the farmer then has in mind, chinteti, while measuring out the grain, dhanyam minanto, aparam netva vikinitum, having taken it to the market to sell it. This second dhanyam minanto kasako aparam netva dhanyam vikinitum chintetu. If I'd been writing this in Pali, I would have omitted that second dhanyam. It's unnecessary and even slightly clumsy, because as we discussed earlier, where you have got an object of one verb earlier in the sentence, and there's another verb that clearly applies to that same object. He's measuring out the grain, taking to market and selling. Obviously, it's the grain that he's measuring, explicitly so. Taking to market, yes, it's the grain he's taking to the market, and selling. Well, it's the grain that he's selling. You don't need to repeat it. I would say it's slightly clumsy, I would say, this sentence, to repeat the dhanyam there. Dhanyam minanto, kasako aparam netva, vikinitum chinteti would read as much better Pali. So measuring out the grain, the farmer, taking it to the market, intends to sell it. What is actually happening at this moment, so you can get an idea of what these verbs can mean, these absolutives can mean. I read this as being that the farmer is at this moment measuring out the grain. So dhanyam minanto, measuring out the grain, chinteti, he has in mind to do what? To take it to the market and sell it. Aparam netva vikinitum chinteti. So in other words, the netva is an act that has not yet happened in the mind of the speaker of this sentence. What's happening at this moment in the mind of the speaker of the sentence is that the farmer, the kasako, is measuring out the minati dhanyam. So dhanyam minanto kasako, the farmer is measuring out the grain. And while he's doing that, chinteti, he has in mind, I will take it to the market and sell it. Both of these are future acts. It's just chinteti. He has in mind, he's thinking of it. So these are two future acts, the netva and vikinitum. But because you get the two verbs in sequence, netva vikinitum, it could be netum vikinitum, aparam netum vikinituncha. The first one could also be in the infinitive, flips to an absolutive because there are two verbs of similar form in sequence. But remember that this netva refers to a future act. We can do in English. You said, I will, I'm sitting at home, I will, having gone to the market, buy such and such. So the having gone is a past act in relation to the future act, so to speak. I'm sitting here now, I'm saying I will buy something, I will, having gone to the market, buy something. So having gone to the market is going to be a past act in relation to the future act that you're saying I will buy. I will, after getting to the market, I will, having gone to the market, buy. Exactly the same in Sanskrit and Pali. Note number 20. Aham pattena paniyam pivanto dwarasmin tatva maggam ulokemi. The text in the printed book is an error. You'll see in sentence 20, it should be last word in the first line. It should be tatva with a long a, literally having stood. Aham pattena paniyam pivanto dwarasmin tatva maggam ulokemi. So I, ulokemi, I am looking, maggam, I'm looking at the road. aham maggam ulokemi. What am I doing while I'm looking at the road? Patena paniyam pivanto. Drinking water. We'd say from a bowl. In Sanskrit and Pali, patena, Pali, in Sanskrit, patrena. Literally with a bowl. It's just the idiom, the way you say it, with a bowl. I'm using a bowl to drink. So patena paniyam pivanto, with a bowl, water drinking. Dvarasmin tatva, literally having stood in the door. So it's just standing in the doorway. Dvarasmin tatva, maggam ulokemi. So I'm there, drinking water I'm stood in the doorway, drinking water out of a bowl, and I'm looking out at the road. Aham patena paniyam pivanto, dvarasmin tatva, maggam ulokemi. Number 21. So aparamha kirankinitum puttam pahinati. So, first word in the sentence, he, subject, pahinati, he sends. Sanskrit, prahinati. So he sends whom? The puttam, he sends his son. By the way, again, in English, you'd say somebody sends his son. I'll ask my son about it. Where it's obvious whose son you're talking about, then you don't need to specify his. And if I say, "Oh, I'd better, I'll send son to do it," it sounds a bit odd in English, but where it's obvious whose son you're talking about, you don't need to specify. So number 20, so puttam pahinati. The implication is he'll send his own son. To do what? Kinitum, to buy. Kiram, milk. Apanamha, from the market or from the shop. So apanamha kiram kinitum puttam pahinati. He sends his son to buy milk from the shop. Number 22. Mayan dhammam ugganhitum ussahanta panditena saha mantema. Mayan dhammam ugganhitum ussahanta panditena saha mantema. So mayam mantema, we discuss, often has the meaning of, like discuss, consultation as well. So we discuss, we have a discussion, panditena saha, with the pandit, with the scholar. So we're having a discussion with the scholar, mayam panditena saha mantema. Doing what? Well, ussahanta, attempting, trying, present participle, masculine plural. So mayam dhammam ugganhitum, trying to learn the dhamma. And remember, ugganhitum, literally to take up, to grab up. It's one way of expressing to learn. So mayam dhammam ugganhitum ussahanta, we ussahanta, trying, attempting, dhammam ugganhitum, to learn the Dhamma, so in an attempt to learn the Dhamma, panditena saha mantema, are discussing with the pandit, with the scholar. Number 23. Churehi saddingehi binditva manuse pilenta tumhe asapurisa hota. So, tumhe asapurisa hota, you are wicked people. To say tumhe asapurisa hota. Doing what? Why? Manuse pilenta, tormenting people, oppressing, tormenting people. In Sanskrit, pidayati. In Sanskrit would be pidayanta. In Pali, pilenta. So oppressing people, manuse pilenta. In what way? Chure gehe binditva. Literally, housebreaking, literally breaking, bheda, literally splitting, as in sankapeda. You split in a house, meaning housebreaking, breaking into a house. The way to express it, gehe bindati, he splits in a house, meaning he breaks into the house. Chure he saddhim, with thieves. So tumhe, you, asapurisa hota, are evil men. Churehi saddhim gehi binditva manuse pilanta. So manuse pilanta, tormenting or oppressing people. Gehi binditva, breaking into their house with thieves. So by breaking into people's houses and tormenting people, you are wicked people. Again, you see, you could have put it Churehi saddhim gehi bindanta manuse pilanta. Both present participles, but two verbs of the same form. Change the first one to the absolutive. Gehe binditva manuse pilenta. You could also use the absolutive instead of pilenta. That would also have read it as correct Pali. So pirayitva, having literally having tormented. It's the reason why I'm saying that you're wicked people, because you break into their houses and torment people. So gehi binditva manuse pilenta, or gehi binditva manuse piditva. Both are correct. Aham suvarnam parye sammane deepam ha agacchante varnije janami. Aham suvannam parye samane deepam ha agacchante varnije janami. So aham janami, I know. Whom do I know? Varnije janami, I know the merchants. Merchants doing what? Agacchante, accusative plural, the merchants who are coming. Where from? Deepam ha, from the island. So Deepam ha agacchante vanije janami, I know the merchants who are coming from the island. Suvarnam parye samane, this is an alternative form, remember, of the present participle in mana, meaning so seeking. Pari e samane, seeking, looking for. So aham vanije janami, I know merchants. Deepam ha agacchante, who are coming from the island. Suvarnam parye samane, seeking gold, looking for gold. So aham suvarnam parye samane deepam ha agacchante varnije janami. Number 25. Aham acharyo homi tuvam vidjo hosi. Aham acharyo homi tuvam vidjo hosi. I am a teacher, you are a doctor. So acharyo is the teacher. It's that acharyo, stem form acharya. In Sanskrit it's acharya, Shankaracharya. In the phonetics, the native phonetics of the Thai language, it's the same word that is ajan. When we say ajan as a teacher, what happens is the final, very often happens in Thai, the final syllable drops off, and under the phonetics of Thai, a final R or a final L are pronounced as an N. So acharya, drop off the final Ya bit, it becomes achar. Under Thai phonetics, ajan. So when you say ajan, so that means teacher, acharya. So aham acharyohumi tvam vidyohosi. You are a doctor. Vidyo. Let's look at this word. It's from Veda. Vid Veda, meaning knowledge, as in the Rig Veda. The Vedas just means the knowledge. Ayurveda, literally life knowledge, life science. Ayurveda, life science. Veda, you can frequently in Sanskrit turn this abstract Veda into a person of knowledge, a person who has knowledge, by vriddhi of the main vowel of the root, in this case the only vowel of the root, and changing the a to ya. So make Vaidya in Sanskrit. Vaidya would therefore mean a person of knowledge. And that was specifically then specialized to mean a doctor, a Vaidya. And by standard phonetic mutation, Vaidya in Sanskrit becomes Vedya in Pali. So originally it meant any person of knowledge, then specialized to mean a doctor, as in a medical doctor. Rather like our word doctor, like the Latin word doctor actually means a teacher. From docere, to teach. But it became specialized in modern English to mean a medical doctor, also a doctor in the sense of a PhD. Why we do that actually originally was because when somebody had reached a certain level of knowledge, he was then entitled to teach others. That's why he's called the doctor, the teacher. That's your PhD doctorate. The idea is you've reached a level where you're entitled now to teach undergraduates. So that's the thinking behind the use of the word doctor. In Sanskrit and Pali, it just means a person of knowledge, but specifically having this vitally useful knowledge of medical science. Number 26. Tvam asapurisa buddhena desentam dhammam sutva sapuriso bhavitum ussahasi. So a slightly peculiar reasoning in this sentence. Tvam ussahasi, we've had ussahati, he tries, ussahanti, ussahasi. Second person singular, you are trying. So tvam asapurisa. Asapurisa, that's the vocative form, just talking to you, O evil man. Tvam asapurisa. Buddhena desentam dhammam sutva. So here, sutva, literally having heard, but by hearing, buddhena desentam dhammam sutva sapariso bhavitum sahati. Tvam asap, you, the wicked man, sapariso bhavitum ussahasi, you are attempting. I'd almost expected to see this in the imperative, would just be ussaha. You, O wicked man, you should attempt ussaha. Okay, it says here you are attempting. You, O wicked man, are attempting ussahasi sapuriso bhavitum, to become a good person. Buddhena desentam dhammam sutva. There's a mistake in this sentence. Why is it desentam? It should be buddhena desitam. you could say that Buddhena desitam dhamma, that's the dhammam taught as a past participle, desitam Buddhena, by the Buddha, or the sentence could read Tvamasa Purisa Buddham desentam dhammam, the Buddha teaching the Dharma. The way Buddhena desentam dhammam is just, there's a mistake there. So it should be Buddhena desitam dhammam, the Dhamma taught by the Buddha, desitam, past participle, Sutva, having heard the Dhamma, Buddhena desitam, Sappuriso bhavitum usahasi, are attempting to become a good person. I'll read that again, changing the desentam, as in the printed book, to desitam. So tuama sappurisa, Buddhena desitam dhamman sutva sappuriso bhavitum usahasi. I'll read once more. Tuama sappurisa, Buddhena desitam dhammam sutva sappuriso bhavitum usahasi. Number 27. Aham panditehi saddhimantento dhammena deepam palento bhupalo asmi. Aham bhupalo asmi. I am an earth protector. So I am a king. Panditeni saddhimantento, discussing with the scholars, discussing with the learned men. Deepam palento, ruling the island. I said before, this palento is the combination of protecting and ruling. More strictly speaking, protecting is the original meaning of this, the root pa, palayati. This mantento, as we know, you could change that without altering the meaning to mantitva, as an absolutive, because mantento, palento, two verbs of the same form in sequence, you can change the preceding one to absolutive. I'll read again. Aham panditehi saddhim mantento dhammena deepam palento bhupalo asmi. Number 28. Varahe marenta chora kasaki pilenta papakamani karonti. Varahe marenta chora kasaki pilenta papakamani karonti. So the chora, thieves, karonti, do, papakamani, singular papakamam, an evil deed, plural papakamani. So the thieves, papakamani karonti, perform, perpetrate, commit evil deeds. Varahe marenta, so varaha is a pig. Cognate, I think, with our English word a boar, B-O-A-R, meaning a wild pig. Varahe marenta, killing the boars, killing the pigs. Kasake pilenta, and harassing or tormenting farmers. Papakamani karonti. So thieves, by this marenta, also, okay, it's present participle, you can also have that is the reason why I'm saying that they're doing evil deeds, because marenta, because they are killing. So varahi marenta chora kasaki pilenta papakamani karonti. These thieves killing boar, tormenting or harassing the farmers, are committing evil deeds. The idea is the explanation of why you're saying they're committing evil deeds is, that's the evidence against them, killing the boars and tormenting farmers. Varahe marenta chora kasake pilenta papakamani karonti. Number 29. Silong rakanta punyakamani karonta manusa saggam papotum akankanti. Silang rakanta punyakamani karonta manusa sagam papotum akankanti. This akankanti is in Sanskrit akankshanti. So manusa, people, akankanti, desire, seek, as they have ambition, how's it translated? They hope. Sagam papotum in Sanskrit, praptum, Pali papotum, to obtain, to reach. So sagam papotum akankanti, they desire, they hope, they aspire to get to heaven, to reach heaven. Silang rakanta, keeping virtue. Punyakamani karunta, doing meritorious deeds. Silam rakanta, punyakamani karunta, manusa sagam papotum akankanti. Number 30. Akusalam pahaya, papam parivajjetva viharanta narasa purisa bhavanti. And again. Akusalam pahaya, papam parivajjetva viharanta narasa purisa bhavanti. So nara, men or people generally, sapurisa, become good. Sapurisa bhavanti, or are or become good. Nara sapurisa bhavanti. By doing what? Here we've got these absolutives that have the sense of by doing something. You do something and you, by that reason, that is the cause of you becoming a sapuriso, a good person. So akusalam pahaya, abandoning. Akusalam, the unskillful. Kushala in Sanskrit, kusalam. Akusalam, the unskillful. Papam parivajjetva, parivajjeti, to avoid. Remember we discussed earlier, means to skirt round, to avoid it. Papam parivajjetva. So avoiding evil. It's sometimes translated as a sin. It generally has the much broader meaning of just evil. If you translate it as a sin, that has certain cultural, religious connotations from different traditions, which view sin in a different way. The papa is just generally anything that's a bad deed, an evil deed. So don't restrict the translation to sin or sinful. It's broader than that. It includes, but is broader than what in Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam would count as a sin. So akusalam pahaya, papam parivajjitva viharanta narasa purisa bhavanti. This word viharanta, the vihara, where the monks dwell. So viharati, you can dwell, but it's also to adopt a certain lifestyle. That's your permanent mode of being. So viharanta, dwelling, abiding, as your way of being, abiding so that you, akusalam pahaya, paham parivajjitva, abiding, having abandoned akusala, parivajjitva papam, having avoided papam, viharanta, abiding, having done those things, and abiding, staying that way, not slipping back into it, viharanta, narasa purisa bhavanti. So abiding in a situation in which they have abandoned akusala and avoiding papa, avoiding evil deeds, viharanta, abiding, narasa purisa bhavanti. I'll read that once more. Akusalam pahaya, papam parivajjitva viharanta, narasa purisa bhavanti. Good, that brings us to the end of 13b, and in the next video I will deal with the section 9, translation into Pali.